Hi, my name is Edna. I am a librarian here with High Plains Library District, and today I'll be showing you how you can make your own school supplies by using Cricut and other materials that you might already have around. School supplies can be really expensive for people to get, and some of the cheaper items that you can get, such as dividers, end up being made of plastic. In an effort to cut down on plastic, today we're going to be using paper. For today's project, we are going to need a die cut machine and its relevant materials, cardstock, one sheet for each of the dividers that you make. I use 12 by 12 paper for these dividers. You're also going to need a pen, a ruler, glue, and paper clips. So there are two different ways that you can potentially make these dividers. You can either use a 3-hole punch to punch a scrap piece of paper and based off of those measurements, or you can take a previously existing divider, maybe one that's a little bit ratty, one that you don't mind writing on too much, and you can use that as your template. Let's start out by measuring the holes on the existing divider. So let's see, we can see that this divider is slightly longer than the standard 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. That's okay, we're going to round it down to 11. So we can tell by going from 11 to the first hole that there is 1 1/16 of an inch between the top and the first hole. The hole itself is a 1/4 inch. So note that down because we will need that information. Between the first and the second hole, we have 4 inches. This is an easier divider than most, so this one is also 4 inches. And we can see that from the bottom, it's a little bit different, and the distance is 1 3/16 of an inch. And again, each of the holes is a 1/4 inch. We also need to measure the distance of the hole to the edge of the paper. This will make sure that the divider has a long life and it's not getting whacked around too much when you're shuffling papers. So this ruler says to us it is a 1/4 inch in from the edge. We'll link an engineering conversion chart for you below. Next, let's figure out how many divider pages we want and how big to make each of our tabs. I want this divider to be 11 inches tall. However, I do not want the tabs to start immediately at the top. So I'm putting a 1/4 inch of distance at each end. Subtracting 2/4 inches from 11 makes 10.5 inches. Let's say I want 4 tabs. I would then divide 10.5 by 4, the result of it being 2.625. Alright, so that is the size of our tabs. Alright, let's begin with our design. First thing that you're going to want to do is open up the Cricut Design Space or whatever software program your die machine uses. Today we're going to be using the Cricut Explore Air 2. We are using the Explore Air 2 today. Alright, we've got our software open here now. First thing that we're going to be doing is selecting a shape for our tabs. The library does have access to Cricut Access. If you do not, then please come to any of our Makerspace locations and you'll be able to use the same account, use our machines. We make a point to make sure everything is accessible for everybody. Alright, I like this little half circle here today. We are going to have to modify it a little bit. So I'm going to rotate the circle 90 degrees. In doing so, we then switch our width and our height around. That's okay, we'll work with it for right now. So we're going to adjust the height to be 2.625 inches high. And then I will unlock the proportions and bring the size of the width down to a single inch rather than the 1.3 we were working with. The result is this cool little half moon shape here. Now, this is where you can start to mess around with the process to figure out what is the best way for you to attach words to the tabs. You can follow along with what I'm doing here today, but of course, go with what makes the most sense to you. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place text over the circle here. I'm going to place the text over the circle and size it down so that it fits better on our tab. I will then rename the tabs. How are children learning in schools these days? I need one for math, one for science, one for English, and one for history. Those are our 4 tabs. All right. So we're setting up as many tabs for each subject that we're going to need. Kind of laying them out so I can see them best. From here, we are going to center each of the text over the tab by using the align function and going down to center. We are then going to make sure that the layers are cooperating with our needs. And we can adjust the size of the text to better fit our needs. Now, if your Cricut has capabilities of using a pen to write on the tabs, then go for it, use it. Not all Cricuts are capable of that, so sometimes it is okay to cut the words right out from the tabs, just keeping in mind we're probably going to need to reinforce that at a later date. So let me get all of these aligned and grouped. And the reason that we are doing the grouping is to make sure that everything stays nice and neat and together. And that will go up to the top here. We can see how English is a little bit too big for its tab right now. That is okay. We can size it down. If you're anything like me, you might get a little bit irate if there are subtle differences between the tabs. And this will give you an opportunity to try and make everything as symmetrical, parallel, other L's as you like. All right, so I am pretty happy with how these are looking at the moment. We are going to take these and put them aside for just a moment. Now we're going to make the base shape for our dividers. Unlock the aspect ratio on a square shape and set the width to 8.5 and the height to 11. For the sake of ease, make sure to position the square at 0 and 0 on the X and Y axis. We've got our square. Now we're going to need our holes for our prongy bits on the dividers. Is that what they're called? Prongy bits?
Sounds like the technical name.
Set the size of the circle to 0.25 for a 1/4 inch hole. There's a chance you're going to need to zoom in order to work with your circles, but this is how I get around it. All right, we're going to use the X and Y axis to make sure our holes are positioned exactly where they should be. I'm not sure how it is with other softwares, but I discovered that when we're working with Cricut, the X and the Y is specifically coordinated to your shape at the top left corner, which is significant because if you have a shape that is Euclidean, you need to compensate for where that's going to lay. I don't know if that makes any sense, but we're going to roll with it. So we are going to set our X position to 0.25 since the hole is a 1/4 inch in from the edge. And then we will set our Y to be 1 1/16. All right, so 1 1/16 of an inch is 1.0625. So we are going to set the y-axis at that distance from the top. This is where we need a little bit more math again. So we are going to take the 1 1/16 of an inch that we already have. We are going to add a 1/4 inch, and we're also going to add the 4 inches between the two holes. That puts us at 5.6125 for the y-axis of our next hole. The beautiful thing about this project is you can keep the axis on the X at 0.25 the entire time. It's very easy to do that. So I'm going to duplicate our circle twice here and place them according to the X and Y. $5.6125. And then we repeat that same process again for the next hole. So, 0.25, which is this hole, plus another 4 inches will be 9.8625. All right, zooming back out again so I can inspect everything. One of these circles disappeared on me. That's because I adjusted the same circle twice. So let's... No, I accidentally forgot a decimal point. There it is. There it is. Okay. So, zooming out, a quick visual inspection says that everything is a-okay here. So now what we're going to do is we are going to select both our main body and our circles, and we're going to do a combine exclude function. And now you have a lovely solid rectangle with 3 little holes at the side, which is beautiful. However, we want these tabs, these dividers, to hold up for a little bit, so we're actually going to be making a small reinforcement strip. The way that we're going to do that is we're going to make another rectangle and unlock the ratio. I want not too terribly big of a reinforcement, but big enough that will come to both sides of the holes. So we are going to set the height to 11 inches and the width to 0.75 for 3/4 of an inch. We'll then set it right up against the square. You can also use the align function. And then we will take both our exclude and our new rectangle, and we're going to do a slice function. This will create 3 holes, a band with another 3 holes in it, and separate this piece off. Not to worry though, we are just going to weld those 2 back together. And now we have our main body and our reinforcement strip. We're going to get rid of these extra circles, and then we're going to duplicate our reinforcement strip for each of our dividers that we are making today. All right, I'm now going to group them and hide them because they are done. We don't need them anymore. All right, now what we're going to do is we are going to place each tab to a body. We're going to duplicate the body for as many tabs that we have. If I'm feeling particularly anxious on that day, I'll sometimes make an extra duplication just to have all of my bases covered. From there, we are going to select our tab group, and we are going to rotate it 90 degrees again. We will then use the X and Y axis to precisely place the tabs where they are meant to be. So we are going to set the X-axis to 8.5, which is the distance from each edge of our body. We will then set the Y-axis to 0.25, which will make the tab perfectly align with where I want it to be. What we're going to do is we're going to ungroup the tab. It was just there for us to keep things together anyway. We're going to select the half circle and our body, and we are going to weld them together. From there, we will make sure that our text is at the front. We will then be sure to attach the text to the weld result. This is a really important step because you don't want the text to be floating off on its own mat when we get to cutting, which is a lesson I had to learn several times. Okay, from here we can then take the next main body and place that at the very upper corner. The reason that I like to place them on top of each other is so that when I unhide layers, I can make sure that everything is lining up correctly. All right, so we have our next tab, and we're going to do the same function that we just did, just a little bit differently. From here, we're going to repeat the same process of rotating our tab and placing it on the X and Y axis where we want it. So the X is still 8.5. The Y we need to adjust to compensate for our previous tab. So our previous tab was 2.625 inches away. We need to add the 1/4 inch margin that we have at the top. And we find out that the next tab needs to be placed at 2.875 inches on the Y axis. All right. From there, we do the same thing where we ungroup the tab, weld the tab shape to the main body, and then place our text label at the top and attach it to the main body, which isn't even your main body at this point anymore. It is your true and actual divider. All right. Unhiding the first level, and I can see these two are well aligned in their placement to each other. All right. Again, we are going to take one of our main bodies and we are going to place it at the very corner. Another reason to layer them all on top of each other is to make sure that you don't need to compensate for your X and Y axis measurements. It's better to start everything out at 0. We rotate 90 degrees. We place it on 8.5 on the X-axis. We add the width of the previous tab again. Which comes to exactly 5.5 inches. All right. We then ungroup the text and the tab, weld together the main body and the tab, bring the text up to the front, and attach everything together. All right. And I like how everything's aligning still, so we can move on to our last divider. So again, setting the main body to X and Y 0. Rotating our tab 90 degrees. Setting the x-axis at 8.5. And one last little bit of math here. Adding the previous tab's measurement to the current, we end up with an we end up with a y-axis of, let's see, 8.125. And now we can see we've done our math correctly because the end of the tab of our last tab is 1/4 inch away from the bottom. Pat yourself on the back, celebrate, because math is hard. All right, last time we're going to take the shape of our tab after ungrouping, and we're going to weld it to the main body. We'll then take our subject and bring it to the front. Lastly, attach it. And now we have our dividers along with our subjects that we are going to cut out of our paper. One thing that you can also do is make extra reinforcement for your tabs by just duplicating the shape twice as many times as what you're going to need, and leaving the duplicate shapes off to the side to cut on maybe the same mat, maybe a different mat. You'll have to figure out your heart's content on that one. All right, so I don't want to print all of these today or cut all of them out today. So what we are going to do is we are going to hide all but one divider and one reinforcement for today's purposes. All right. Be sure to save the name of your project. Let's see. And I'm adjusting the cut layout so that way I am saving as much paper as I can. And then we are ready to boogie. That is on. Okay. All right, once your mat is all loaded, then we can let her rip. All right, now our divider is all done. Let's unload it from the machine. and D, math. Awesome. And now we've got our divider. And we've got our reinforcement strip. From here, you will simply align your reinforcement strip to the holes at the back. You will glue it down securely, and you will use paper clips to keep it in place until it's fully cured. And that is how you make really cute dividers. I myself have made a few of them. For example, this is the first that I made. You can see where I did not coordinate the holes well enough, but that is okay. This is the learning process. You can also adjust the size of your dividers. These ones are a 1/2 inch longer than standard. The reason being they are going in my File of Life binder, and all of the files are going to be held in plastic protectors, so they need to come out a little bit further to compensate for that. You can also make planner dividers using these same methods. This is for the same size and hole layout for a planner that my sister owns. Whether or not her math is correct stands to be seen, but you can see how I applied the same technique with the distance from the top, the size of the tab, and had I printed more of these, there would have been exactly enough room for 4 tabs. Alright, in the event that you do not have these materials available at your home, but you still want to participate in this project, we do have makerspaces available at various locations around our district. We hope to see you there soon. If you don't know to measure things properly, it has to have velvet cheetah print.